All right, hi everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. Today's date is May 17th, 2021. Reminder, please read and abide by our code of conduct when you are attending these meetings. This is listed out in our agenda here. These meetings are being recorded and uploaded to our Carvel YouTube playlist. So if you're watching from home, after this has already been recorded, welcome. We hope that you are able to join us at a future meeting. We do meet every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. We also offer office hours in addition to those community meetings, and we meet every second and fourth Thursday of the month. So we will be meeting next Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. And that's just an opportunity for anything that we don't get to from the meeting and requires further discussion, or if there's anything that you wish to bring to the team, anything that you need help with Carvel, or if you have any specific questions, that's a great place to bring that up as well if you aren't able to attend these community meetings. When you do attend these meetings, we ask that you please add your name and if there's an organization that you represent for using Carvel, please add that in the attendees section here. For announcements today, we have a release of YTT. This introduces a convenience function to URL module for parsing typical URLs, and then release notes is linked out in the agenda. Does anyone from the team want to go over any specific details for this release?
Yeah, this one said there's a call out here. We really want to thank Hanlin Shi for his contribution. It wasn't just adding another function, like that's the net result, but actually like help carve out how we can have domain specific libraries. This is just one of them, and help set a pattern for be able to do that. So we're super excited about that contribution. It's sort of an ordinary thing, and it's stuff we'll be adding to, but it also sort of sets the stage for having other things that'll be useful. So thank you again, Hanlin.
Great, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. As far as the rest of the agenda goes, I will hand it off to Aaron Hurley to facilitate that further.
Cool. I'll share my screen. Switch to that view. All right, so status updates. YTT schemas still very much in progress. Anyone want to chat to the past week?
Yeah, I'll provide a quick update. The current work in flight is a story to annotate a schema node as any type, part of our experimental schema feature, and then adding to documentation around it. So how does this work and what is currently supported in schemas? And then just there is an epic in ZenHub right now, and you can see sort of the progress that's being made as part of like our first MVP for YTT schemas. And some of the work left there is some usability testing and documentation to really like provide that update experience of being able to take your existing configuration and use schemas with it. So feel free to check that out.
Awesome, thank you, Carrie. Then we also have on the kapp-controller side, the package manager APIs in progress. Eli, any updates you want to share there from the past week?
We're planning to cut a release today that will include the OpenAPI schema changes, so folks can start consuming that. And then we have the PR to split the package CR in review right now. So hopefully a release with that change will be coming later this week.
Cool, thank you. And just to clarify, those are the alpha releases.
Yes, yeah.
Cool. All right. And then we've also had some image package work over the past week. and another version, another release dropping soon. Joao, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so the release should already be in GitHub, but we haven't officially just spread out the word. But this release is quite big because it solves two bugs that were found in image package. And also it introduces two breaking changes to image package. One that is related to the default tags that image package adds. So this should not impact anyone, but it will change the tagging system for image package. And the other breaking change is that now when you create a bundle with, and the files that are part of that bundle contain permissions to execute, now that is copied through. The permissions are copied through, which means that if you use the prior version to create a bundle in this new version, you'll get two different SHAs, but that's the only difference. It is a breaking change. It is not going to break anything that you're doing currently. It just changes the SHAs. So those are like two things that I'd like to call out. Then we have some UX improvements, and yeah, and we have two bugs there. And when we get it released out, we can talk a little bit more about maybe those bugs.
Cool. Any other updates folks want to provide from the past week? All right. And let this serve as a reminder to add any discussion topics if there are things you want to chat about, or triage help if there are any specific issues you'd like to chat about today. But we'll dive into the backlog then. Let's see. So we got a lot going on. But maybe we'll take a look at what stories need to be discussed for this week. So maybe I'll start by filtering so it's a little easier to read. So filtering on the YTT schemas. We currently have schema node can be annotated to allow any type in flight, as well as the documentation story. Up next is usability. Would now be a good time to discuss the migration guide story?
I'm trying to remember how well defined that is or not. Can we look at that? Oof. I think we need a little bit more detail to make that shovel ready.
Okay. Cool. Then after that is the remove the schemas features flag, but this is probably good. Usability testing usually surfaces some improvements.
Yeah, we're expecting part of doing the exercise, we'll see gaps and we'll want to address those.
All right. We can move on from schemas then. And would it be worth discussing accept data values as plain YAML track further? I know we had already pointed a couple stories.
Yeah, we got some feedback that one of the stories was large, and so actually broke up that story into two in the interim. So and actually I had marked the story that was broken up to be 99 points because there is no like way to remove a point in ZenHub. So I just created something I thought would be sort of obviously not up, not the right points. So that's this one. It's back to 3, but the intent here is to sort of revisit this with a piece of it removed. And then there's a subsequent story with the portion that was extracted. So it's at least worth going over this, and maybe we can throw points on these two stories. Is that cool? Okay. So this is about how we will merge data values when they're coming from this plain YAML channel. So remember, this is the part about where data values are coming in through this -- data - values dash file flag. So when we give multiple of these, how should it behave? And so this decomposition falls through this this one dimension here of whether or not the two documents that are passed in are either perfectly matching in terms of structure, or they're perfectly missing and so it's just the union of the two. So the intent here is that there aren't any weird cases that will support in this version of the feature, like, oh, you provide a data value that was an integer over here, and now it's going to be a Boolean over here, or a array over here, and now it's going to suddenly turn into a map. Like, that's out of scope for this story. That would make it incongruent. So this brings a simplifying assumption that the full set of data values that the user will provide will merge well in this way. And what they would get otherwise would be a standard, whatever the error message they would get today when you try and combine these. Say if you were using overlay, so it would say, hey, you're trying to overlay a map on top of an array, and that's not allowed. Something like that. So there's some existing behavior that we would lean on potentially for this. So there's a couple of assumptions baked in there. One, I guess I just sort of realized, clearly assuming that we're using overlays as the merging mechanism as opposed to some custom one, which I think is an okay assumption. And two, that the thing that makes it incongruent is where the structure is different between the two data values flags inputs. Any questions about that? Okay, so I think there's two cases we can scroll through them. This first one is where you see that bar and bar here and values 2 are both arrays, and it's just that whatever the value that was for value 2, that replaces it. So that is interesting and different than like sort of your default overlay behavior. So that's something in there. And here in the second example, you can see where it's just we're completely disjoint set. So it's like perhaps a use case to motivate this would be someone has a very large set of data values and they want to break it up into files to make it easier for the consumer to provide them. It's like, oh, this is all your system configuration. This is your network configuration. These are your image configuration. Be able to like provide those in separate files, and they would just like combine easily. This still takes on the responsibility for providing documentation as outlined there.
Is it possible to provide a data values file in the traditional way that you can now with the -f flag and use this data values file flag together?
Like in the bigger picture, yes. For the sake of this story, it's out of scope. So we're not trying to support that. If something quote unquote bad happens, that's a degraded or degraded experience that you know you're using that feature in an undocumented way at the moment. You can think of it that way. But in the bigger picture, absolutely. So these data values, if you think about how data value preprocessing occurs after all the other kinds of overlays are processed, the data values that get set from the command line or from the environment, those are sort of last in line to get applied in the data values preprocessing algorithm. This is one of those. This is just extending that set of command line parameters. It's just that a whole bunch of them conveniently came in and through a file as opposed to individual dash dash data dash value invocations. So it would overwrite anything that you had done with overlays effectively. Bless you. Did I explain that well, Carrie? Okay. Okay, cool. Any other questions about this?
Considerations about schemas. What should happen? Should it just fail for now? Should it just, whatever happens, happens? When you provide the minus minus enable schemas flag.
Oh, if you turn that on?
Mhm.
Yeah, subsequent story will cover if there's any new interactions. In the proposal, in the research work we did around this, there's no new interactions with schema.
Okay.
So in the same way that you would expect these dash dash data value flags to work with schema, so too with this new member of that family of flags. It should behave exactly the same way.
Is there like any subsequent story that talks about the order that these should be applied? So we do
Yes.
have environment variables and
Yep.
and also you can provide the values there. There are stories afterwards that say where this sits, right?
Yes, we don't have one spec'd out yet, but there is one that will do that when it talks about the ordering with respect to Carrie's question, which was data values overlays. So yes, we will cover that.
Okay, so is it okay if we put it in any place for now, or do we want to put it in a
Oh, I see. Like if
place?
you're going to be informed about it, I would say it would be in the order. My guess is the thing that would make the most sense is whatever order that it shows up on the command line. So if I include dash dash data values file, and then include the file like this, and then immediately after that include like an individual data values to override an individual value, would expect that to override it. So that's what I intend.
Interesting. Do we have that capability to know the order that the values from different flags come into play in with Cobra?
I don't know. That's a
Yeah.
good question.
That's currently how the dash F flag works. So your first dash F flag takes priority over all other ones. So it would be the same mechanism for this.
But I think Joao's talking about between flags.
Yeah, between flags. Like if you do minus minus what's the data values file,
Oh,
and then you do like a values, like the other flag. I don't remember. I think it's like data values, and then you provide the values directly on the command line. You don't know which one came first.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say for this story, while we're talking about this story, I would do the best you can to try and like implement that. Like if you're trying to take that into account. Good question.
Maybe add a note there, just so we remember.
That is out of scope.
Yeah, to put it there. There's like no place to put it, or maybe I'll just put it in the end as the last thing we do it for,
Like one
just
of the
for now.
considers. Mhm.
Yeah.
For data values flags, I think they only function as overlays currently. So that data value has to be specified in your data values file somewhere in order to use the data values flag. So I think it makes sense to consider data values flags last, since they function as sort of like overlays now.
Yeah.
Something to think about, I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is a really important conversation. But I'm thinking like the scope of what we're talking about right now is like what we need to know in order to point the story. So there's overlap in the sense of like, okay, well, you get to the point where you're combining things, what would it be? And we're not trying to necessarily in this story define that behavior per se. But I get it that like that could be an easy win. So just since you kind of cracked that can just a little bit, Carrie, really quickly on that note, there's a undocumented feature where if you add a plus in front of the key name for a dash data values invocation, like for the key name, if you added a plus in front of it, it actually will do it'll do a insert also a missing OK equal true. So that exists. Yeah,
Nothing today.
exactly. And in fact, I think steady state what we'll want to do is have this whole family of flags operate the exact same way, which is they'll just overwrite and they'll just sort of blindly add. And the intent would be that by the time that happens, schemas are online and the support that you used to get with data values overlays, the kind of checking that you used to get from that, you'll get a better version of that from schema because you'll get the structure stuff with nicer messages and the typing stuff with nicer messages. So yeah, okay. Yeah. You're all poking at the right stuff though. Like this is relevant. Yeah, good chatter. Okay. Let's try see where our let's try and throw points on this and see what kind of spread we have, if any. Had a chance to think about this. Looking like everybody's ready to go. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Rough consensus. It's a 2. Cool. All right, you get 3 guesses what the next story is. The first 2 guesses don't count. How about same thing, but the focus now is on, if only to be able to use the word incongruent in a sentence. Incongruent documents. So here's some examples here. Array to a map. The map quietly wins. There's some merging that still goes on. This isn't just about blindly if there's something that shows up, say like this thing is providing bar, that like it replaces all of bar here. It's just that re is a map here, re is an array here. And so the map wins. But there's this other part to the bar map that it's still a map, so it's merging through, and that also comes through.
This ability to change type, does that work for scalar values as well? Like foo being 13 in values, if that was specified as a string, would the string win out?
Yeah, it's basically last one in wins. And then the second scenario is about saying, and with, but we're still merging. Let's not lose the fact it's not just like blindly replacing. We're still merging. So
You scroll up to the first acceptance criteria. Thank you.
Folks have any questions? You feel okay to point?
I have a question about one consideration there. It says that there's another story for other. Where's that? There's a separate story, 377, for handling other kinds of merging. What other kinds of merging are we talking about?
The ones in the previous story. 377 is the previous story. This is just saying this is a continuation or related to that previous story. That's all that's meant to indicate.
Oh, okay. Because in these two scenarios, we always convert arrays to maps. So I was just thinking that that sentence meant there were other, like that we would do like maps to, like we do maps to arrays or maps to scalars, like in a different story or not. But we assume that all types will go to all types in this story.
Yep.
Thinking about the way that like overlaying two files currently behaves, that second acceptance criteria there is, I believe, it's sort of a deviation from what we support now. So, like for example, if we were to overlay bar, we would lose cooks, that key, correct, in the current overlay feature.
If we replaced it, right? So today you try that with the current the way overlay works today, and it would fail because it would say expected a map but actually got an array. And so that was backward. That would fail that way. And then you're like, oh, I want to replace that. So if you throw in an overlay replace over re, then you get the result that you're looking for. You get a merge of all of bar and a replace of re. And so that's not necessarily, I don't mean to share that in order to say, well, this is how we should implement it. That there's a possibility of like, maybe that's what makes sense. Like there's some design work here. Is this something where there's possibly two modes in which the overlay feature itself works? Because we think we want to keep the existing behavior. We definitely want to keep the existing behavior for now. So we don't want to just suddenly change the way that overlays work. So either it's a mode that we say, hey, overlays, when you're merging, use simple merging. And it's like, okay, all right, I won't complain if the structures are different. I'll just like replace. Or you may decide I want the complexity to be in the whatever's trying to calculate these overlays from these inputs, and say, okay, we'll have to go through and if there's structural types, they replace somehow or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot
know.
of sense.
Yeah, you have to think that through. Could be other ways of looking at it too. I don't mean to box anybody in a corner. Just all right. Everybody a chance to think about, do they have in hand the intrinsic complexity? See, sure, I was thinking hard. Slides in a thumbs up. All right, 1, 2, 3. Cool. Yeah, got a little bit of a spread. That's legit. I expected. Maybe you want to talk about anything that's come up for you that we haven't yet discussed in terms of complexity, source of complexity. Yeah.
No, nothing new. I feel like there's gonna be some things that we didn't foresee that will get in our way here. So Just erring on the side of caution here, going a little bit bigger.
That's an unknown point, or maybe even a known unknown point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Through experience working on YTT, sure we can all attest.
Cool. All right, I respect that. We do have a rough consensus of 2. Did anybody suddenly change their mind given Garrett's observation? Okay, seeing none. So that rough consensus is 2. Cool. All right, so there's more to throw in here. Be working on that, carving that out as we go.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So outside of those 2 tracks, maybe we'll take a look at non-epic stories. So this one, an image package, is next in our prioritized backlog. Joao, do you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, let's do that. So basically what we noticed with image package is when you're trying to pull, especially when you're trying to pull a bundle, we on image package try to see if the images that are part of the bundle are co-located with the bundle, to make sure that we can update your images lock to point to the new locations of those images, so that you can have a more up-to-date images lock. The problem here is that when you're trying to pull, sometimes you haven't copied the bundle. So the bundle would be in a registry. All the images would be on the original registry. And when we are trying to pull a bundle that looks like this, if the images are behind a registry that has authentication, the pull will fail. Okay, because we don't have authentication to find the images. Nevertheless, image package doesn't really need to have access to these images in order for it to be able to pull, because when you do a pull, the only thing that we do is we pull the contents that are part of the OCI image of the bundle. All right, so this is the scenario that we encountered ourselves with. So this brings some issues, as we can see here, right? And the solution that we're trying to propose is a solution that is based on our copy with renaming of images, where every time that you copy an image, every time that you copy a bundle, image package would save the location where all the images are being copied to. So this information will be present in a place. So now when you do a pull, the only thing that image package needs to do is, it finds the bundle, it finds this other place that contains all the locations of the images, and that's it. And it knows that if he needs to pull things or if he doesn't need to pull anything. Okay. Does it make sense till this point?
So there's now 2 images. One of them is the bundle itself, and then the other is a copy receipt.
Basically.
Okay. Okay.
So now that we are at this point of the story, I realized that this story doesn't have any acceptance criteria on it. I just started writing it 2 weeks ago, so I don't know if we want to go and point this story right now or not. But this is the general idea of what this story it talks about, and for us to know that there will be another place that is going to be also an OCI image that is going to be in the same place that the bundle is, in the same repository that the bundle is. So when you're doing a pull, you'll have access to that image. And if the image does not exist, it means that the bundle was not copied. So we can just say like, okay, fine, we're good. We don't need to go and try to access all the images. So this also solves another problem that is linked further, a little bit further down, and that the pool was a ON operation, because every time that we wanted to get the pulling the image, pulling a bundle, you have to go to the bundle, and then we'd have to go to all the images. So by having all this information concentrated in another image, you just need to go to the bundle, go to this image, and if the image is present, then it means it was copied. So we moved from a ON scenario to a scenario where we just need to go 2 times to the registry. So this is more or less the story that we have here. There are some use cases, like some scenarios that need to be added to it. So yeah, there's one scenario, and that was it 10 days ago.
I like how you know there's an air condition, you just haven't like written it out yet. You're like, I know there's gonna be a red one.
So I don't know if you all want to, maybe we need a little bit more detail on what we expect, like the use cases that we have here, in order to point a story, I think. But yeah, at least now you have like a general idea of this, what is the story is about. I'll try to get it ready for next week for us to be able to point it out.
Cool. Thank you, Joao. Let's see. Is there a next story that would be helpful to discuss? I know YTT is after that, as for non-epic stories. I guess I could do not that. What was that? Not in an epic. YTT, kapp-controller, kapp. We're probably not going to get to that. Kapp. Did anyone add any topics? Yeah. Any other stories worth discussing this week? Cool. Well, any other topics that people want to talk about today? All right. I think you're going to wrap up a little early then. Nancy, would you like to close us out?
Sure thing. So everyone, thank you for joining this week's edition of the Carvel community meeting. I did add something to the announcement section that occurred last Friday. KubeCon Europe released their videos on YouTube. So I added the link to Carvel's session up at the top. So please be sure to check that out. And I'll also link it into the YouTube description so that you're able to go and check out that session. If you feel you want to join us live, we have a few opportunities for you to join us. We meet every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time for our community meetings, and then we meet for our office hours every second and fourth Thursday of the month. And so we'll be meeting next Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. And that's an opportunity for more in-depth discussions and anything you may need help with. If you aren't able to attend any of those meetings, the maintainers are always available on Slack in the Kubernetes Slack workspace within the Carvel channel. So we hope to engage with you in some of those opportunities in the future. So thank you again. We'll see you next time.